Hey everybody, Melon here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing the long-awaited teardown for the HyperX Haste 2. Now, as always, in order to do your teardown, you will need a precision set of screwdrivers. Now, most of the screws inside the Haste 2 are standard Phillips heads, but they are different sizes, so having a kind of precision set would be highly advised. And as always, you'll need something to keep track of your screws as well. But that's pretty much all you're going to need for the teardown of the Haste 2, so let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, in order to start your teardown of the Pulsefire Haste 2, what we're going to do is we're going to need to go ahead and remove the stock skates on the bottom of the mouse here. Now, unfortunately, the access holes are underneath the stocks, but on the plus side, the HyperX Haste 2 does come with an extra set of stock skates. So if you do end up opening up the mouse to do repair on the inside or cleaning it or whatever you want to do on the inside, you can just use the extra set of stock skates or put on aftermarkets like I did here. I have the X-ray pad obsidian dots on here, but it's completely up to you. But to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove these access screws. So there's one here, one here, one here, and one here. Now that you have the base screws removed, all you have to do is put a little bit of pressure on the sides of the mouse's shell. So you put a little bit of pressure here, a little bit of pressure here, and the back will pop open just like this. And then you can just get your fingernail and run it along the side of the mouse and the shell should pop off. Now, one thing about the Haste 2 that is rather unique, this mouse is actually very loosely installed. So it's actually very, very easy to take the top shell off. So if it just falls off right away, don't worry about that. That's normal. It's just very loosely installed. You just pull it straight up and the top shell comes off in one piece and we have our base layer here as well. So let's go ahead and we'll disassemble the entire top shell first and then we'll move on to the base. Alrighty, now when it comes to the top shell of the Haste 2, there really isn't too much to go off of here. All there is the main clicks, there's a DPI button here, and then there's also these side buttons. Now let's go ahead and remove the main clicks first. Now to do that, you'll need to undo the screws right here, 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 and here. Now, as always with these screws, be very, very gentle because these are pre-tensioned at the factory. And if you overscrew them, underscrew them, it will prevent your main clicks from moving. So be very, very careful. Only remove these unless you absolutely have to. All right, so now you have those screws out. It's very easy to pop out the main clicks. All you do is just take your fingernail and just grab onto the back of this little connector here, and you can just pop it off. And the click comes out of the mouse just in one piece. Again, be very, very gentle with these. Don't force them out unless you absolutely have to, because if you over tension or you bend this piece of plastic here, you will break the main clicks very easily. So be very, very careful. So that is the main clicks. Now there is also this DPI button here on the very bottom of the shell that goes into here. Now this is installed via a clip at the bottom. I'm not going to remove this today just because these plastic clips tend to be a little finicky and I don't really want to risk potentially breaking it, but those are removable as well if you want to take those apart. Now the side buttons are pretty standard here, nothing really too fancy. These are just the standard clip side buttons we commonly see. You can push them into the shell and then pull them straight up and they pop right out of the shell just like that. Very, very easy to do. Nothing really too fancy here. Pretty standard for top shell disassembly. But that is everything for the top shell, the Haste 2. But let's go ahead and talk about the main board and the base reassembly next. So first off, we're going to go ahead and we're going to remove this piece here. Now there is a screw here, there is a screw up at the top here, and then there is also a screw here, and there is also a ribbon cable right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take these screws off, pop this off, and then we'll remove this ribbon cable last. Alrighty. Now, one thing I did note, this can be kind of hard to get off because this is actually on a bit of a stand right here. So if this doesn't come off naturally, sometimes you have to peel it off this little connection right here. I'm not sure if I can show you on the camera, but there's a little bit of a gap there. The best thing to do if it doesn't come off is to take a flat-headed screwdriver bit and just take it and gently push it in underneath this thing here and push up, and it should force it off. Do this and we'll pop this off like this. There we go, just like that. So just be careful with it. Again, keep in mind there is a ribbon cable here, so you have to be kind of careful with this. Now, next up, what you're going to do is you're going to go take this ribbon cable off. Now, again, this is a very, very tiny ribbon cable, so you just have to kind of pull this up like this, get your fingers underneath, and just gently wiggle it out just like that. So that is how you take apart your side PCBs. Now you can take the actual side PCB off entirely, but I'm going to leave it intact for this teardown just because it does have plastic clips on it and I don't really want to break those. So I'm going to leave them on, but you do see that the side switch here is actually Kales, which is rather unique. They're Kale red dots, which I haven't seen on a lot of mice recently. Normally we commonly see those Wano white dot switches, but aside from that, pretty straightforward. Next up, let's go ahead and take off the remaining of the PCB here. Now this is where this gets kind of tricky because there is this standoff here for the scroll wheel. Now I believe this is what colors these scroll wheels RGB because there's a ribbon cable that runs underneath here. Not sure if you can see it. So there's a ribbon cable that runs from right here under here, and that connects to the scroll wheel here. So this piece is a little unique, so be really, really, really careful with this piece. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and grab your star screwdriver. You're going to remove this screw right here. Now, the next part is kind of tricky because this is where this board gets a little tricky to take apart. So what you need to do is you need to actually take the entire board off of the unit like this and kind of hold it like this. And then you can take the scroll wheel out of the encoder. And then what you can do is once that's out, then you can grab this ribbon cable and gently pull this ribbon cable out. And that is how you remove that piece. Now, last up, we have the rest of the board here. So the board is disconnectable. There is a 4-pin connector here, which you can remove, but I would advise against it just because these cables are very finicky. Instead, the easiest way to remove the board from the base is to take apart this screw right here at the top. And taking that screw out will allow you to take off the power part of the PCB, and then you can remove the PCB from the base of the mouse just like this. So there we have our base, and then all we have that's left is the power cable and the PCB. Now, in terms of what we have physically on the board here with the Haste 2, this board is rather unique and does have some interesting things on it. So first off is the sensor. Now, this is actually the HyperX Hyper Dash sensor as well, which is a proprietary sensor. I'm pretty sure this is a 3389 or 3395. It's modified if I'm not mistaken. And then the really interesting thing here is the MCU, because we have this Novuton MCU, which I have not seen on any mouse before, which is another really interesting oddity about this mouse. We also have 2 pillar switches on the board as well. So this middle pillar switch here is for the DPI button, and then we also have a scroll wheel pillar switch as well. Now again, I haven't really been able to identify these because there's no identifying markers on them. I'm going to assume they're a WANO or a KO pillar switch, but I don't really know for sure. And then we also have these very interesting red switches. Now these are actually HyperX branded switches, so I don't actually know who manufactures these. I'm going to assume maybe they're Kale or maybe they're WANO. I don't actually know for sure, but these are actually HyperX's own switches, which is rather interesting. Now the scroll wheel encoder, I can't quite see what the encoder is. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure it's a TTC. That's what was on the previous Haste 2, but I can't quite tell. But regardless, it is using some rather interesting tech we haven't seen on a lot of other mice on the market, which is quite interesting to see. But that is pretty much everything for taking apart the Haste 2 in terms of disassembly. Let's go ahead and talk about the reassembly process next. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started with the base shell reassembly. Now this is pretty complicated just because there are a lot of ribbon cables on this mouse, so it does make this reassembly a little difficult, but I'm going to guide you guys through the entire process. So first thing, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take this plastic power connector and we're going to reseat this into the top of the mouse, and we're going to get that re-anchored here. Don't worry about kind of lining the cable up right now because we're going to be moving it around quite a bit, so don't worry too much about that. We just want to get this screw into the top of the mouse as soon as possible, so we'll do that first. Now that that's done, now we're going to worry about the scroll wheel. Now, when it comes to the scroll wheel, this is going to be probably the hardest part of this entire teardown process. Now, what I recommend doing is I'd recommend taking out the actual LED part of this just to make this really easy. So what you can do is you can take it out like this. You just kind of hold it and just bend it out just like that, and the entire piece will come right out. Now that you have this little piece here, what you want to do is you want to take this tiny little ribbon cable, and that is going to go back onto this little header right next to the 4-pin power connector here. So we're going to go ahead and put this back in. Now, since it is a ribbon cable, you do have to be very, very gentle with these because they are very easy to break. Again, I wouldn't take this off unless you absolutely have to. And just with a little bit of wiggling, you can get it to seed in just like that. Now, what I recommend at this point is I'd recommend taking this and just take a fingernail and see how there's that little lip towards the top of the cable there. Take your finger and just catch the lip and push it down just to make sure it's fully seated. That'll be the easiest way to do that. Now, next up, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and you're going to put this back into the scroll wheel. So you're going to go ahead and just shimmy this back into the scroll wheel just like that. Now that you've done that, this is when this gets a little finicky. So what you need to do is you need to take this scroll wheel and put it back inside the encoder. So you can do that by just lining up the central wheel here and just gently wiggling it in. Again, try not to put too much pressure on it because it's very easy to break these. Just gently wiggle it in, and then once it feels like it's seated, just test and make sure you can still scroll the wheel, and it should work okay. Don't worry about testing the scroll click right now. We'll test that after. Now, next up, what you want to do is you want to take this and put it onto the base of the board. So you want to line up these standoffs right here with the scroll wheel, and you want to put it back on top just like this. And then when the board's roughly lined up, you want to take these power wires and just kind of shimmy them into their natural guides right here on the side of the mouse, just like this. And then once that's done, you want to push the board down. Everything should kind of go through. You should see the board standoffs poke through the bottom like this. The board shouldn't shimmy too much. And then once that's done, you need to take that screw we took out of this middle part here, and we need to re-anchor this little RGB part right in the middle, just like that. So I'm going to grab the screw and do that next. And then once that's done, once you have that in, that should hold the board down. This is kind of like the first anchoring point for the board aside from these screws we took out earlier. At this point, I would advise taking your mouse, plugging it in, make sure the RGB still works, make sure your scroll wheel still actuates, make sure the scroll wheel click still works. Just double check everything, just because if this ribbon cable isn't in all the way, it can cause issues, but we seated ours properly, so we're good to go. So once this is testing okay, you're good to go and go move on to the next step. Alrighty, now that we've gotten the scroll wheel whole situation fixed up, now we're going to go ahead and move on to the side buttons. Now this is the second harder part of this repair because we do have to deal with this very, very, very tiny ribbon cable. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put this ribbon cable into this little standoff connector right here. Now this is again very tricky. You have to be extremely delicate with these cables because they are very, very easy to break. The best thing to do is just kind of naturally guide it into the hole as best you can. Try not to put too much pressure onto the top. And then once you have it in on its side, you want to take your fingernail and just grab that lip that I mentioned earlier on the middle click, and you want to just force it down into the connector right here. Now this would be another opportunity where I'd recommend plugging the mouse in, making sure these side buttons still actuate. If the side buttons don't actuate, reseat the cable because there could be a piece of dust or maybe the cable isn't 100% even. Just double check them before you put the mouse back together because this is a bit difficult to take apart. So just make sure you test these side buttons before you put your mouse back together. But if the side buttons work okay, then you can go on to your next step, which is going to be putting these back onto the standoffs. So the 3 standoffs on here correspond to the standoffs here, 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 and here. So we're going to go ahead and put that on top of those. We're going to go ahead and click that down. Now, since this bottom one is so tight, it will probably just hold itself on there naturally, so you don't need to put your finger on top, which is great to see. So next we're going to go ahead and put in the screws for the side button connector here. Alrighty, and now that's done, you are all set up. Again, just triple check, just make sure all your buttons reconnect, plug the mouse in, make sure all your buttons still actuate, make sure everything works still properly. Again, as long as you're doing this correctly, everything should work no problem. So that is all for the base reassembly for the Haste 2. Let's go ahead and do the top shell, then we'll put the unit back together. Now this is pretty straightforward. There really isn't a lot to talk about here. What you're going to do first, you're going to go ahead and take the side buttons in. You're going to go ahead and line them up with the side of the mouse and kind of shimmy them in like this. And they should just naturally slide into place, go back into their natural clips. Now these are held into the mouse just by pressure from the PCB and by these clips here, so don't worry if they're a little loose, they will tighten up over time. Now next up, let's go ahead and do the main clicks. Now just like we've seen on pretty much every single main click, it's extremely important that you be very, very, very careful with this. Don't force the clicks in, just be very, very gentle, because if you mess up the actuation of these, you can just ruin your clicks, so be extremely careful. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take the base part of the click, we're going to go put it into the shell like this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this little lip here, that this little part right here on this click goes over this little standoff right here. We're going to make sure it slides in just like that. And then once that's done, you just take your hand and just gently press on top of these screw holes and the clicks will go back into place. And then you can go ahead and grab your screwdriver and just put the screws back in. Now be extremely careful. Do not over tension these, because if you over tension them, you will prevent your main clicks from working. Just be very, very gentle. The moment you feel any resistance from these screws, just stop screwing. Now, if you put the screws in naturally, you should see that these clicks will naturally kind of rebound just like that. That's exactly what you want to happen. So let's go ahead and do the exact same process with the right click here. So we're going to take this, put it into the top of the shell. We're going to make sure that this little standoff towards the top slides over this. We'll go put your finger here and here just to click them on, and then we'll go ahead and put the screws back in. And if that's done as well, both of your clicks will just kind of have a natural rebound just like that, which is exactly what you want to see. So that is everything for the top shell reassembly for the Haste 2. Let's go ahead and connect the top shell to the base and finish up this teardown. Alrighty, now in terms of reinstalling the top to the base of the Haste 2, the only thing you really have to worry about here is these power cables. You just need to make sure that these are just gently pushed into the side of the board. They shouldn't go over that little lip you see right here. They should stay just short of that. Just be careful, because if you do get the power cable stuck in the side, you could have issues, but they naturally go back into their normal position, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and you literally just put this back onto the top, just like 2 pieces of bread, like you're making a sandwich, and just push it down. Now there are no clips in this mouse because the top shell just kind of comes off normally, so it's going to be pretty common for your mouse to feel very loose right now until you put in these base screws. So all you do is just literally push it down. If it falls off, don't worry about it, just hold it down like this. What I like to do is just put a little pressure on the top like this and hold it down like this, just to make sure it doesn't slip around, but very easy to put them on. There's no clips to push down on any side of the mouse. It's very, very simple to put together. So let's go ahead and put back in these top shell screws. Now, once you have the base screws in, just double check and make sure the mouse doesn't have any creaking or flexing around the sides. If there is any creaking around any sides of the mouse, just to give the screws an extra tighten, but everything should work completely fine. And that is everything for the teardown of the HyperX Pulsefire Haste 2, a very, very serviceable mouse. The hardest part of this mouse is honestly just the little ribbons cables, but aside from that, a very, very easy to service mouse overall. Thank you very much for watching yet another teardown video. I greatly appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other teardowns like this in the near future. And if you'd like to support the channel and support what I'm doing here with the teardown project, you can become a member here on YouTube. So your support is greatly appreciated however you decide to support the channel. But that is going to be everything for today. Thank you again for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I will catch you guys in the next teardown video. Peace.